Mayor de Blasio is giving an update on the coronavirus pandemic in New York City. Let's go to...
The budget will take us forward. This budget will help us turn the corner. This is a recovery budget that will allow this city to come back strong. I want to thank my colleagues because there was absolute focus on helping working families. In fact, this is one of the greatest investments in working families in the history of New York City. We are sending resources to the communities that need it most. This is a radical investment in working families, and that's what we need right now to come out of this pandemic and move forward. I want to thank everyone on the council, everyone on the City Hall team, OMB, everyone who brought this together. I'm here to formally announce that the city budget for fiscal 22 will be $98.7 billion, and that money will be crucial to our recovery. To Speaker Corey Johnson, to Finance Chair Danny Drum, to your whole team, thank you for a process over months where we worked together in common cause. Thank you for the work you did to establish the Rainy Day Fund, which is absolutely crucial. We'll be talking about this now, a crucial part of protecting the city's future. Thank you for your response to our executive budget. I'm very proud to say we took a number of items from the City Council's response and put them into this adopted budget. So this has been a case of great teamwork and common cause, and a tremendous thanks to our budget director, Jacques Giha, and the whole team at OMB. Thank you for your amazing work. Thank you to everyone in Intergovernmental Affairs and everyone at City Hall who did so much. The whole team that made this happen against a backdrop like none we've ever dealt with before. So it's a recovery budget, which means laying a foundation for our future. We took the stimulus funds, we focus them on ways to create growth again in our economy, to move us forward, to create jobs, to bring this city back, and in the process create a lot more city revenue that will sustain our future. We know a recovery budget requires, at the same time, fiscal responsibility, and so I'm very proud to say that working together, we have added a huge $2.8 billion to the city's reserves. $2.8 billion to make us safe for the future, including the first time ever Rainy Day Fund. What are we going to do with the funding in this budget? We're going to, once and for all, win the battle against COVID. That is job one. And then take the lessons we've learned and establish New York City as the public health capital of the world. We're going to bring our economy back, bring our small businesses back, approaches like Business Quick Start to help businesses come back faster than ever, bring our tourists back, all the pieces that will build an economy strong in all 5 boroughs. We're going to bring our kids back to school in September and then help them overcome the learning loss experienced during COVID. We're going to close that COVID achievement gap. We're going to work on the academic needs of our kids, but also the emotional needs of our children who have been through so much. And we're going to make a major new push on literacy, including an innovative pilot, and I know this is something that the council really believes in, putting 2 teachers in a single classroom in the neighborhoods that need it most at the youngest grades to help us win the battle to ensure that every child can read and can move forward. This is a really important initiative, which I think is very, very promising for the future of this city. And of course, we all know the way to recovery is through public safety. I keep saying it and I believe it. Recovery equals public safety equals recovery. And so historic investments in grassroots solutions to gun violence, in the Cure Violence movement, the crisis management system, and a whole host of other approaches that will make us safer from every neighborhood up. We need a recovery for all of us. And this is an area where there has been extraordinary consensus. We need a recovery for all of us. I've talked to so many of my colleagues here. People do not just want to go back to January 2020. We want to do something different and better as we bring this city forward. That's what this recovery budget is all about. With that, I want to turn to my colleague, and it's been a good 4 years together. And I have to say to Speaker Corey Johnson, thank you. Over the years, many times we've dealt with incredibly challenging issues. We did not know we'd be dealing with a global pandemic. but throughout it, we have stayed in constant communication. We've worked through the issues. Sometimes, guess what? We didn't agree all the time, but we always found a positive resolution for the people of this city. So it has been my honor to work with you through this process, and congratulations on this recovery budget. Speaker Johnson.
Thank you, thank you. It's so nice to be here. I want to thank, of course, Mayor de Blasio for working with us these past many weeks and many months to put together a budget today that works for New Yorkers. And I really, really want to thank my tremendous colleagues who played an essential and instrumental role in negotiating this deal. Each and every one of you were diligent, were deliberate, were hardworking in hours and hours and hours of meetings, day in and day out, to get us to this point. I especially want to thank just an amazing human being, a great friend of mine, someone who I'll be friends with for life, someone who deserves a big round of applause, the chair of the New York City's Finance Committee, Councilmember Danny Drum. Yes, go Danny. And I also want to thank someone who every single year has focused on helping low-income workers, helping our not-for-profit sector, looking at the city's capital program, and someone who cares about, and I mean this, sometimes we're like, Helen, please. But she does it because she really cares. And I really, really want to thank, she is so thoughtful, she is so diligent, the chair of the council subcommittee on the capital budget, Councilmember Helen Rosenthal. I want to thank all of the members of the City Council's budget negotiating team. Each and every one of you have spent so many hours these past many weeks on endless Zooms, going line by line by line to get us to today. And it is really incredible that we can stand here together in person to celebrate a budget agreement that will have a positive impact on the entire city. Something, as the mayor said, that was unimaginable 12 months ago. Last year was a very different budget. We had to make terribly difficult decisions. We spent hours painstakingly combing through the budget in a very deliberate way to do as much good as we could with severely reduced means. And the people that supported all of us in doing that was the incredible staff at the City Council, led in our finance division by someone who has stood up here the last 4 years, but in the years before that with Speaker Mark Viverito. I want to give a big, big shout out to LaTanya McKinney for her incredible leadership and work. Thank you, LaTanya. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I want to thank all of the Finance Division, all of the staffers in the Finance Division for their work. I also want to thank Jacques Jiha, our OMB Director, for his partnership and work as well. So thank you, Jacques. This year we had a bit more money, but the process was still as every bit deliberative. This is my final budget as Speaker of the City Council, and I am really, really, truly honored to have been able to serve with my colleagues in the city that we all love so much. For the last 3.5 years, I have been proud to lead a city council that has been thoughtful, innovative, and imaginative. We didn't shy away from daunting projects, difficult conversations, or tough fights. Whether times were good or bad for New York City, this council worked on behalf of those who needed it the most. And this budget continues our dedication to the most vulnerable and marginalized. We had 3 main goals throughout our budget negotiation. First, helping people recover from the pandemic. Second, rebuilding some of what we lost. And third, reimagining our city to address some of the disparities that COVID-19 laid bare. A big part of our recovery means investing in our students and young people, and this budget does that. We've increased fair student funding to historic levels, something that this City Council has prioritized and fought for years. For the first time ever, every school will receive 100% of their fair student funding money. a big deal. It's a really big deal, which means money is going directly to classrooms that need it the most. We are also going to make sure that every school will have a social worker, which is a huge deal as well. And I want to thank our education chair, a very meek, mild, and introverted man, Mark Traeger, for his help during the budget. We are investing in smaller class sizes and a new literacy curriculum to address learning loss from the lack of in-person instruction. I want to thank the mayor for his partnership on that. These are critical steps in helping our young people recover from the past 16 months. This budget comes at a time when we are rebuilding so much of what we lost, and we must be strategic as we plan for our future. One of the biggest priorities, as the mayor mentioned, was rebuilding our reserves. That has always been a priority of ours. And the money we fought for in past budgets before the pandemic hit helped us weather the economic devastation we faced due to COVID. And I'm proud to say that we are putting an additional $500 million in the city's new rainy day fund. It's an incredible investment in our future that we couldn't have imagined possible a year ago. That is going to bring this new rainy day fund, one that was created by the Council's Charter Revision Commission, up to $1 billion in the new rainy day fund. This might be the first time ever that anyone has ever cheered for budget reserves, but we will take it. We also want to rebuild some of the programs that we were unable to fund at the levels we wanted to last year. We have not only restored many critical programs to their pre-pandemic levels, we have increased support for programs that we knew our communities needed in order to recover. This is how we will rebuild and recover from the past year. These are not the most headline-grabbing initiatives, but they are crucial to the communities that they serve. They are at the heart and soul of what we believe in and fight for as a city council. Just to highlight a few, I'm talking about alternatives to incarceration, to keep people out of jail, and instead other programs to help them rebuild their lives, mental health programs for seniors and students and young people, housing programs that will prevent foreclosures and create and preserve affordable housing. We also created new initiatives, including one to address the horrific rise in anti-Asian hate incidents that we have seen over the past year. I really want to thank the co-chairs of our Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus council members, Idanique Miller and Adrienne Adams, for their constant leadership during this budget. Everything that they have done, I want to thank them both. Another part of the rebuilding will be ensuring that New York is providing fundamental services that government is supposed to. I'm happy to report that we reversed many of the painful cuts that we were dealt with last year. Cuts that were felt in our city parks, our cultural institutions, and our libraries. Many of these places have served as refuges to New Yorkers over the past year, and I'm proud to say that we can support them in return. So we reversed all of those cuts that you saw last year to parks and cultural institutions. I could go on and on. I'd go on and on. Sanitation services as well. We reversed all the cuts to sanitation services. I could go on, but I'll end by saying that this budget, my final as Speaker of the City Council, is a continuation of everything we have been committed to as a council. In the beginning, we were fortunate to be in a time of prosperity for our city. Last year, we were dealing with a devastating economic crisis brought on by a global pandemic. And this year, we are supporting a city reopening and recovering from unimaginable loss. But through it all, we have remained committed to equity, to protecting our social safety net, and to doing the most good for the people who need it the most. So I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for working with me and with everyone here on the council in good faith to do good work for New Yorkers. I look forward to continuing that work together for the remainder of our terms. And I will just end on a bit of a sappy note. I talk to my mom, of course, every single day. She injured herself, so I hope she's okay. But my mom worked 3 jobs when I was growing up. She was my lunch lady at school, she was a dental hygienist after school, and she cleaned houses on the weekends. My biological father left when I was 11 months old and never came home after work one day, and she became a single mom overnight at 21 years old. And I grew up in public housing. There were 12 units in the town that I grew up in, and I went to a good public school, and I was able to go to a good, very affordable summer camp in the town that I grew up in. My mom had to work during the summer. And so as someone who is an openly gay man that came to New York City at 19 years old with 2 bags, as someone who seroconverted and found out I was HIV positive at 22 years old in 2004, as someone who has been sober from drugs and alcohol, July 13th will be 12 years of sobriety, my most important accomplishment in life. I tell you all of that because when we do this budget, and each one of us could tell a similar story, I'm not the only one. When we do this budget, it is personal to us. These programs are personal to us. The work that we are doing to help children and seniors and public housing residents and new immigrants and teachers and single moms and victims of domestic violence and homeless New Yorkers, that work is personal to us on this city council. And so when we spend hours and hours and hours going line by line, driving each other crazy over each budget line, it is because we care. It is because each one of us has a story that brought us to the New York City Council. Each one of us has a story of our parents or our grandparents who did something to set each one of us up for success, to be able to run for office. Each one of us arrived in this building with a backstory that included many of the things that I talked about. And so to all of my colleagues in government in our final 6 months here, the mayor has spoken eloquently about his family as well. I want to say thank you. Thank you for the partnership over the last 3.5 years. Thank you for caring so much about New Yorkers, and thank you for getting us to the historic today. I love New York City. It is the greatest city in the world. Let's get this budget done. Thank you very much.
I just got to say to Corey, that was beautiful and heartfelt, and thank you, because first of all, God bless your mom, and I hope she's going to be okay. Give her our best for all of us, please. But second, you took some real challenges and you turned it into something very positive for a whole lot of other people, so God bless you for that, brother. Mr. Speaker, maybe it's time for a handshake. What do you say? First of all, we'll do a long, formal, I want to hear from several of our council colleagues, then we'll take questions on the budget. First of all, and he deserves all the praise he got from the Speaker, he steered this process beautifully as chair of the Finance Committee. My pleasure to introduce Councilmember Danny Drum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for all that you've done for your leadership here in the city. You've had a tremendous impact, a positive impact upon all New Yorkers' lives, and we thank you for your service to the city. Thank you to OBM Director, also Jacques Gia. I've had the opportunity to work with you both as the Finance Department Director and now also as OMB Director. It's been wonderful to work with you, and I appreciate everything you do for the city as well. Of course, thank you to our Speaker, Corey Johnson, who is a dear friend, and I'm just so proud to be able to have had this opportunity. I owe a lot to him, and first I said, I don't know if I want this role as finance chair, and he said, we're asking you to serve, and I said, okay, if that's the case, I will serve, and
You're still not sure.
I'm still not sure. No, actually, I am very sure, and I have to tell you, I have really, really loved this. This has been the highlight of my life, to be able to have an impact on people's lives through the budget process is really something that I never really could have dreamed of. And I also have to thank all of my colleagues behind me here. And as the Speaker has mentioned and the Mayor has mentioned as well, you know, we go through this process and it's quite rigorous, and we had to sit through all of those hearings, and then we go into B&T. But this is the greatest team that I've ever worked with, and I thank you, each and every one of you, from my heart, for working with us, for being cooperative, for being willing to give, for being willing to compromise, and for being willing to put forward a budget that will affect each of our communities. You know, I bring friends to City Hall and I say to them, this is Debbie Rose from Staten Island, and this is Lori Cumbo from Brooklyn, you know, and I love going around and showing all the different neighborhoods that each of us represent. It really is a wonderful thing, this City Council, so thank you to each of my colleagues as well. Yes. Thank you to Vanessa Gibson as well, my former co-chair, and to also Helen Rosenthal. I love you both very much. Much has been spoken about. I'm very proud of the reserves as well. Moody's is going to be very happy when they see what we're doing. And they just upped us, you know, about a week or so ago as well. The ratings, I think, went up about a week or so ago as well. Yes, and so we're back on the path to being New York again. And but one of the things that I am most proud about in the budget, and you know, I ran for City Council for a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons was as an LGBT activist. You know, I came out as an openly gay teacher in 1992 to much tumult in one of the most conservative districts in New York City, and it was over the Children of the Rainbow curriculum. Many of you may remember that. Well, that was 30 years ago. It's hard to believe that was 30 years ago. And today in this budget, because of my colleagues backing me up and because of the Speaker being there as well, we are putting $2.8 million into an LGBT curriculum package for the Department of Education. For me, that is a huge turnaround. And also, we are going to be investing $5 million into LGBT community services and $4.2 million into trans equity initiatives. This is the first time that we have ever invested that much money into programs for those marginalized communities. So I'm very, very proud of that. I'm told I only have 2 minutes to speak. I've probably already gone over. I'm looking at Paul from here, but I just want to say thank you to everybody who's involved in this process. I don't know. Thank you. It's just been beautiful. And this is my last budget, too, so thank you, everybody.
You have the last budget glow. It's a good feeling. Someone who's fought with great energy for what she believes in, and I always appreciate that, the chair of the subcommittee on capital budget of finance, Councilmember Helen Rosenthal.
Thank you, sir. Wow. Well, it's great. It's great to be here, Mr. Mayor. You never called me back, but you did agree to fund what I sent an emissary. What I was fighting for. You all along have brought to the city your beliefs and values, and in this budget it really shines. And I'm just so proud of this city. I'm so proud you're mayor. Thank you very much. Speaker Johnson, no, don't go. I just have to say that you came to my inauguration, my second inauguration, and spoke, and what you said was, you know, Councilmember Rosenthal, when, you know, she's thinking about her district, she has your back. She has the back of your district, and Corey Johnson said, and I have Helen Rosenthal's back. I thought that was so cute until I went to everyone else's inauguration and saw that he said the same damn thing. But I will say this, it is true. Corey Johnson has had the back of the districts of every single one of these council members. Every single one. And I defy you to go through the budget and find anything that is inequitable, because there's nothing in there that doesn't show pure equity and pure devotion for this city, and that comes from Speaker Corey Johnson. Thank you so much. don't know how that all started. Danny, thank you. It's been a pleasure to serve with you, an honor. Vanessa, I didn't know it was so great. Thank you for giving me a chance. So here's my little speech. Over the course of this past year, the city's bond rating has gone up. Our capital commitments have increased, and we are back on track in creating the infrastructure that is vital, not only to our economic recovery, but to our daily lives. In the City Council's negotiations for our adopted budget, we have increased investments for our city's schools, parks, and cultural institutions. Thank you, Danny Drum. Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, LaTanya. Wait, I'm getting to that one. The city has a very ambitious capital budget, and I urge the mayor to turn this budget into a reality. Now more than ever, the city's residents, construction workers, and local business owners need to see and feel our commitment to them, and this budget is where that starts. Lastly, this budget would not have been completed without the dedication of LaTanya McKinney and her team. I really want to thank them. In particular, I work closely with Rebecca Chasin and Nathan Toth. I want to thank them. Nathan, I'm sorry you weren't able to go to sleep last night. But it's a closed budget and it's fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Two more members I want to hear from. First, has worked with us on so many fronts. Particularly thank her for the work she's done with us on public safety over the years, which has been absolutely crucial. And look forward to great things ahead. Council Member Vanessa Gibson.
Good morning, everyone. It's such a great honor and privilege to be here. I want to thank you, Mayor de Blasio and Speaker Johnson and Chair Drum and Chair Rosenthal and all of my colleagues in the City Council, my colleagues in the BLAC, my sisters in the Women's Caucus. It is really an honor to be here. I, too, am so proud of being a member of this body. This is my final budget as a member of the City Council, and I am so proud of what this council has done working with the mayor and the administration. This recovery budget is going to have a transformative impact on many New Yorkers who have struggled over the past year on the devastating impacts of COVID-19. So many New Yorkers have lost hope. They didn't believe that government was there to help them, but this budget, this blueprint is a reflection of our values and our priorities. We are making investments in education, in healthcare, mental health, therapeutic services, anti-gun violence initiatives, youth programs, and so many programs that will make a real difference. So many marginalized New Yorkers of color, communities of color, veterans and seniors, and LGBT New Yorkers, it is going to make a profound difference. And I am so proud that many of us are in this last season of being in the council, but we truly want to make sure that this budget is a budget that is one that is equal for all. And I could not be more proud that we are really investing in our youth with safe space and recreation and summer youth and Compass, Sonic, Beacon, After School, Cornerstone, and so many programs that will make a difference in uplifting our youth and creating a real pathway to the middle class for so many New Yorkers. Speaker Johnson always says, do the most you can for the most in need, and I truly believe that this budget reflects that, and I'm very proud to be a part of this body. Congratulations, Mr. Mayor. Congratulations, Speaker, and all of my colleagues. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Finally, speaking of youth, perfect segue, Vanessa. Speaking of youth, someone who's devoted his career to our young people, particularly to educating them, and made a really big imprint on this budget. And this is something that we've been waiting for. You for a long time, me for a long time. We have been waiting for a budget like this. It's finally here. Councilmember Mark Traeger.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Speaker Johnson. Thank you to my extraordinary council colleagues. These are education champions. Finance Chair Drum, thank you for your leadership as well. I'm just going to go very quickly because there's quite a bit to list, but as the mayor and speaker mentioned and the finance chair mentioned, $605 million to get every school 100% fair student funding. Look at the list of schools that were not at 100%. Those were schools in the outer boroughs. Those were schools in black and brown communities. Now they will have money to hire new teachers, art, music, gym, you name it, social workers, counselors, yes. 500 new social workers. For the first time, we could say that every public school has the resources to have a full-time social worker. No school district in America, I think, can say that. 137 new community schools to meet the needs of the whole child. $27 million for a literacy curriculum to help struggling readers. For the first time, PSAL, sports teams, $6 million for every high school in New York City. Come on. $5 million for a mental health continuum to call health experts rather than 911 for kids in crisis. We don't need the police to respond to 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds having a bad day in school. That's right. This council prioritized the social emotional needs of our kids. And lastly, I'll say, our school communities have moved heaven and earth to support our kids. They deserve nothing less. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for a powerhouse education budget. Yeah.
I want to eat for breakfast whatever Mark Traeger's eating. Wow. Powerhouse. Powerhouse. Few words in Spanish. Very brief. Hoy estamos aprobando el presupuesto para recuperar nuestra ciudad. Es una inversión histórica en las familias trabajadoras. Vamos a impulsar la economía en todos los vecindarios y recuperar una ciudad para todos. Okay, what we're going to do now is 8 journalists, as we do normally in the morning, 8 journalists, 2 questions each, and we're going to do it on topic. Courtney.
Sorry, that confused me. Okay, so this is propped up by $14.2 approximately billion in federal stimulus funding. Is there some concern that this is, just a flood of money that you're not going to be able to see next year? You're basically saddling the next mayor, whoever that may be, potentially with debt. Speaking of debt, what is the out-year gap for?
Okay, wait. That's no. First one, my sister, good try. let's try and deal with your first large multi-part question before your second multi-part question. First of all, I find it fascinating you think it's a problem that there is a quote-unquote flood of money coming into New York City. I think it's a great thing. I think the stimulus was amazing. I think the support we got from Albany was amazing. I think finally getting the campaign for fiscal equity money after 20 years was amazing. I think that's all justice. I think we deserve that money and needed that money, especially after what we went through. But what's also clear is we have built reserves intensely, almost back to the levels they were previously. And I'm very confident about a few things. The economy is coming back very strong. So over the next 2 years, as we receive stimulus funding, and that's crucial to indicate, we have 2 full years of stimulus funding. There's a whole other year coming after this. I also expect infrastructure funding at the rate things are going, on top of the stimulus funding. Continuity with the CFE funding. These are all really important pieces of the equation, but what I think is going to happen is revenue is going to come back stronger and stronger as the economy grows at a very fast rate. That is documented. So we feel very confident these pieces will come together. Number 2, go ahead.
Oh, well, what is the gap for the out year? But then also, can you, last year, comparing to what's going on now to last year, obviously such a big topic of conversation was the NYPD.
Okay, that's really 2 different things. Again, respect. I'm going to talk about the out years. Come on. We're going to go, everyone's going to get a chance, but I need like 1 question at a time. They're big, important questions. We'll obviously be putting out all the materials everyone can go through, but here's the bottom line, the out year gaps. They are manageable. There's been a lot of work to make sure that we handled everything we could in the short term to protect those out-year gaps from being too large. They're absolutely manageable, on top of which we really do expect an extraordinary rebound on revenue. Katie.
I wanted to ask you, just bouncing off the question you want to let Courtney ask.
I wouldn't let her answer. I want to keep things orderly, and it's all yours now.
Last year, there was so much tension around the NYPD budget. It appears that the NYPD budget has actually increased in this year's budget. Can you speak to that? I mean, there are some council members who wouldn't vote for the budget last year because of that. They seem to be here in support of it. Can you just talk about the changes and anything like that might have happened?
Sure, and I'll keep answering, Speaker, obviously, and your team join in anytime you want. Look, first of all, what's happened in every instance is we listened to the concerns of communities, we paid attention to what was going on in the moment, and we tried to make the right adjustments. Right now, we have essentially the same budget as last year. The growth is $200 million, but what that comes down to is the police reform money from the March agreement, and this is crucial. In March, the council and the administration got together to create an unprecedented set of reforms for the NYPD. That included expenditures that went into the NYPD budget for civilian activities. A big piece of the increase is IT needs. We want to have the department be effective. We needed better technology to do it. The other piece, and I say it very openly, is we worked together on overtime. We reduced overtime a lot. We're not able to reduce it quite as much as we wanted. That is a true statement, but we did reduce it quite a bit. So we put in a number that we now believe is the realistic overtime number for what we're going into for next year, but it's substantially less than what it was in previous years. Go ahead.
And the second question I have, I guess, for the speaker to talk about it, the budget documents weren't online when they were supposed to. There was concern of your role and your involvement in the negotiations and the meetings during this. So if you want to speak about your role this time around with the budget and...
let me start and then jump in as you wish. I just want to say...
members who said you were not as involved in this year's budget negotiations.
Yeah.
I can tell you that that's false.
He was at every budget negotiating team.
Yeah, let's...
What about the one over here?
Okay, everyone. Yeah, let me jump in here. We had a very intensive budget process over months. The Speaker and I spoke regularly. We came to resolution, obviously, which is wonderful. We had to navigate an election in the middle of it, which was a challenge, but we got the job done. And the proof is we're all here with a budget where there's real agreement. Go ahead.
Just about the budget, I know they weren't online. I don't know if that was at the...
Yeah.
We were working on them. I mean, there's nothing more to say. We were working. We were doing this budget all weekend. B&T was meeting all weekend. I was on the phone with staff all weekend. I was on the phone with individual members all weekend. We were going through the capital list, the expense list. We were going till the last minute. And typically, last year we did the budget on the final day of the month, but typically we don't do that. Typically, before last year and this year, the budget gets done the second week, the end of the second week, the beginning of the third week, and so there's time to prepare things. But because we're voting on it today, and because we were spending so much time, line item by line item, it took us time to get up there. So I'm sorry it got up there late. I apologize, but it was because we were working late on it. That's the only reason why.
Okay, I'm going to stay on the left side here, and then I'm going to go over to the right side for a little bit. First, Julia, then I'm going over this side. Go ahead.
First an easier one, then a harder one, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you. I like being warned.
How much is the overtime exactly? You said $200 million, but that included IT, so what's just the overtime?
The overtime addition or adjustment we made was $166 million.
Okay, and then maybe a tougher one. At the end of your release, you mentioned mental health investments. So can you be more specific about how much that is? And is that going through your new Office of Community Mental Health before it was Thrive, or is it going elsewhere? How much money going to Office of Community Health?
We'll get you all that. It's a variety of things is the answer. Look, one of the biggest areas we're investing in terms of mental health is the mental health screenings for all kids. That's unprecedented. And then the work we have to do after that. As you can imagine, Julia, once we screen the kids, some kids are going to need additional support. Some will need it one level, others might need on a higher level. So we put in money in the budget for all of that. Obviously, the crisis calls, which we're expanding so that you'll have civilian response to mental health calls where there's no violence involved. That's the kind of thing that will be coordinated by the Community Mental Health Office. It's a variety of pieces. We'll get you the whole outline of it. Okay, over here, go ahead.
So I was wondering, another question about the out-year budget gaps. I'm curious what's accounted for in these out-year budget gaps if you feel like you're leaving a realistic picture for the next administration. For example, is the $500 million rainy day fund in every out-year budget gap in this budget?
It's $1 billion.
Please. You want to start?
You added $500 million this time. Is that reflected in every out year?
I don't know that. No, Jock, it's not. It's 1 year. But future councils and administrations are going to have to decide on an annual basis what's going to go into the rainy day fund. But this is a historic thing, $1 billion in the rainy day fund.
But I guess my question is,
It rolls over each year.
so it is in out years, or?
No, I'm not sure, Joe. I think what you're saying is what's not in the out years, it stays there.
No.
Yeah, I think you're asking it in a funny way. It's not about the out years. The reserves carry over. The reserves carry over. They're not spent. They carry over. So next year there'll be $1 billion in the rainy day fund, and the next mayor and the next city council will have $1 billion in the rainy day fund, and they'll decide if they want to add more money to that.
Okay, let me try that. Thank you, and let me just say it another way. I hope it'll be simple. When the money's not spent, it stays in reserve. When the money's, it's real simple. When the money's not spent, it stays in reserve. So now we brought our reserves, and I want to thank all the councilmen. By the way, I've been at this a long time. I've not met a group of people who cared more about adding to reserves than this group here. I mean, seriously, this is not. It's literally, and you know a thing or two about politics. This is not politics 101. That people say we really want to protect the future as consistently as this group has. So now we're in a situation where we will not have to touch our reserves. They will stay stable. In fact, I expect they'll be added to with each successive budget because we expect really good revenue to be coming in. So I feel, to the bigger question, what are we leaving to the future? I feel that despite what we went through, we've almost restored the reserves to where they were. That's crucial. I feel very good about the revenue forecasts. I feel very good about the spending that's going to help us bring back revenue. I'm really thinking carefully. We don't know who's coming next, but I do want to say I think what that handoff needs to be. I think about that a lot, and I feel very good that this is a good, clean handoff with a fiscally strong budget.
And then along those lines, did you budget for labor wage increases? I know they've been zeroed out in previous budgets. Are those back in for salaries?
So again, we've got the contracts will all be up for negotiation. So we're not presuming what the next administration is going to do. We've covered what we have to cover, and then that's something that's got to be determined for the future, obviously.
I believe the out years were zeroed out.
Jacques, come speak to the...
It's 1 year. It wasn't zero.
No, come over here so they can hear you, Jacques. Jacques. Come here and talk about this.
No, it is 23 zero out and 22, okay, but in 24 we have 1%.
Go ahead.
So speaking about labor, we saw this morning DC 37 expressed some disappointment that there wasn't an early retirement incentive included in this budget. Wondering if you can speak to that.
When the idea originally came up, we really looked at it intensely. We worked with labor, we worked with Albany. The final legislation gave us a choice, and when now we see COVID rapidly on the decline, but the need for recovery to be very, very intense, it's in the interest of the people in New York City to stick with what we've got now. We do not want to see a lot of veteran members of our workforce being actually incentivized to leave just when we need them. So I understand people's feelings, but I think in the interest of the city, this is the right thing to do.
And then just broadly, look, when you came in as mayor 8 years ago, there were lots of expired labor contracts, et cetera. Can you just give a brief update? What is the situation for the next mayor? Are they going to have to negotiate everything anew, or do you have contracts that are leading into the next?
It's a mix. I think the broad answer is a lot of contracts will have to be negotiated because they are expiring or will expire. But I think the atmosphere is about 180 degrees different than when I came in. When I came in, literally 0 workers were under contract. And it was a very negative atmosphere, and I will not name names. I will only say the previous administration did not respect municipal labor and created an atmosphere of distrust instead of partnership. I think we reversed that fundamentally. I think that's a good platform for the next mayor to work with. And one thing that we made very clear is we believe in pattern bargaining, and we drew the line consistently there. And I think that's also a very important precedent. While we're all talking about fiscal responsibility, sticking to pattern bargaining and being resolute about it is in the long-term interest of the people of the city, and I think we're handing that off as well to the next mayor. Yes?
Mr. Mayor, this is the largest budget in city history. It's about $24 billion bigger than your first budget. And I'm wondering how do you respond to folks who have concerns about the rate at which the budget has risen over your term?
appreciate the question, honestly, but I'd say it's about the outcomes. We made it a purpose to redistribute wealth to working people. It's as simple as that. I think in the end, when you look at what was accomplished, pre-K for all, soon to be 3K for all, totally universal, the affordable housing initiatives, so many efforts to help working people put money back in their pockets directly. I'm very comfortable that it worked. It helped the city to move forward, and it helped us address some of the sins of the past. And it's stable fiscally because we've added back to reserves. The rating agencies are recognizing that favorably, and we have the revenue to support it. That's the other thing to recognize. We have the revenue to support it, but we've also been addressing long-term pension issues, long-term reserve issues. I think we're striking the balance.
Can you talk a little bit? I know there was an initiative to look at property tax reform. Is that addressed at all in this budget? What happens with property tax?
So that the Property Tax Commission, which has been, I think, an extraordinary effort, and I want to thank the Speaker for the great people he put on that commission with us. That report is coming out shortly. That will go to Albany for action, and we're going to work to see if we can get action this year, which I think is still a possibility. Okay, I've got 2 left. 1, 2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you give us an update on the other public safety agencies? Did corrections get an increase? Did DAs across the city stay where they are or lower?
Jacques and his team will follow up on details. Yes, we've added resources to DAs. With corrections, we did add some additional personnel because we were having a crisis in terms of shifts, and too many double shifts, sometimes triple shifts. That was unacceptable. So there are some investments, very targeted investments in both cases.
And then specifically regarding school security agents, was a new class of 500 plus agents hired?
No.
Are agents being transferred to control of BOE now?
That will happen at the end of this coming school year, as planned, but no new additional hires at this point. We're trying to resolve the long-term needs, but that's not in this budget.
$50 million put to mental health or anything specific? What would have been?
Everything was pooled. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of new mental health investments, I should say.
Have you defined how the rainy day fund would be used and for what? And do you think $1 billion is enough?
I think the total reserves now approaching their historic high, which was during my administration, is absolutely enough. We just went through a global pandemic, Juliet. We went through, literally, if you want to pressure test our reserves, you just saw the worst case scenario. The reserves sustained us. Now we're rebuilding them rapidly. I feel very good about the number. I also am absolutely convinced, because of the speed of the economic growth we're seeing, and a whole nother year of stimulus coming, and the infrastructure money coming, that we're going to be in good shape.
So how important is the fact that the ratings, the Moody's ratings, improved?
Very, very important to our future. First of all, when the rating agencies, after everything we've been through with the pandemic, the rating agencies actually say, you guys are now moving in the right direction even after that, and we're affirming it to the world, and we're telling people you can trust New York City, that's incredibly helpful. That's going to be another big piece of our recovery. Okay, everybody, thank you very much.